Welcome, everybody, to this morning's Bacon and Coffee. We've got another great guest. Mr. Mark A. Smith is going to join us shortly. But in the meantime, we got to get started with our 30-second countdown. Here we go. And we got Mr. Mark A. Smith joining us from his truly mobile studio. But before we get going, we have to get everybody set up with their little bit of what I like to call caffeine and bovine. Here we go. As Mr. McConaughey would say, how the heck are you today? And where in the world is Carmen Sandiego Smith?
I am happy and healthy and loved, and I am sitting in the IGA parking lot of Townsend, Tennessee. And the reason why is because I have a direct line of sight to a cellular tower today, which means that we're going to have solid internet.
So it's all about the bars, right? It's all about
It is absolutely about the bars, and it's a rainy day in the Smokies, which means everybody in the campground is streaming video.
Ah.
So there's no bandwidth at the campground right now.
Yeah, there's no bandwidth and nobody's sitting around a fire with a band, right?
No. We did that last night. We sat around the fire last night before it started to rain. Unfortunately, people were too drunk. They were passing around the moonshine jar last night, and people were too drunk for me to play. I don't like playing for drunk people because they don't let you get through the song.
That's true. Yeah. But in playing in bars, usually what would happen is they would walk up and grab the mic from us and start singing karaoke.
Right. Yeah.
So anyways, Mr. Mark S.A. Smith, how the heck are you? And so tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today.
All right. Well, I'm actually doing really, really well. And let me tell you why, and then I'll tell you what we're going to talk about today. I'm in the final rewrite of my latest book, The Nimble C-Suite, which talks about how to align the diverse skills of your executive team to perform reliably in our transformational economy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'd forgotten, I've written a lot of books, but one of the things I forgot is it's easy to write a book. It's the editing process that takes so much hard work.
Yes.
And so I'm deep in the heart of that rewrite and very much enjoying it because a lot of details come flooding in that make the book go from good to extraordinary.
And I'm in the middle of the same process. I'm working on an ebook, and I've sent that out to a bunch of people. I don't know if I've sent you a copy yet or not, but I will. But
I don't think I've seen anything from you in ebook format, but that said, send it my way and I'll pay attention to it.
Absolutely. So, but I wrote the first thing. I had a writer go through it, clean it up. I sent it out. I got some feedback. And one of the things I've learned about writing a book is you need to let it sit, kind of like a fine bourbon there in the Smokies, and let it sit for a while and then say, what bothers me about this? And, I'll give you an example of a simple thing that I started with is I started telling the story of my father and how he was in the China-Burma War. Wow. And, how he was getting hanging wires for communications, getting shot at, and, saw all those things, and how he took that and turned it into going to New York City and stringing wires there, and then how he learned things and how he
still getting shot at.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But, how he progressed through life, and what he learned was that, continuous learning and knowledge, and then taking that knowledge and teaching it to other people was basically the secret to success, and how he taught me that very silently. What I missed from that when I started thinking about is, what am I missing here? What am I missing here? And what I really missed is the fact that his parents came over through Ellis Island from Italy
Mm.
and ended up opening up a tailor shop in New York City. And they learned the lessons. They brought the lessons of craftsmanship. They learned the
Mm-hmm.
lessons of business, taught it to him. And then
Mm-hmm.
he took that and kind of used it through life and then taught it to me. And it was like, I was missing that connection of the business side of things. And after I looked
Oh.
at it, I went, wow, that's the key to that opening. It's that one piece that was missing that really pulled, basically put that golden thread through the entire story.
Yes, indeed. In such an important piece, especially since you're teaching people about business acumen,
Mm-hmm.
is to make that connection. And and indeed, it's the same thing. It's right now the rewrite is more about alignment of the entire set of text.
Mm-hmm.
So everything flows from beginning to end, and so it's about transitions and also making sure you're using the same vernacular and using the same writing style across the entire book. And so along the way, we find some really interesting elements that tie things together. And so anyway, I'm in the heart of that right now, and my target is to be completed with the manuscript in the next 2 days. And the good news, I wanted to share this with you and share this with our listener, that the book has been selected as an attendee gift for a international leadership conference on microcities
Hmm.
coming up in Miami on the 11th of November of February, on the 11th of February in Miami. And the reason why is because the event sponsor was one of the early reviewers of the incomplete manuscript, but he was so impressed at what we lay out as far as how to organize an executive suite for transformational business
Mm-hmm.
that he wanted to include that because he sees it as a blueprint for how do you govern micro cities. And a micro city is essentially a city that's designed from the ground up to be socially responsible and make sure that it is environmentally friendly and socially responsible. And that's part of what we bring to the party with this new book is how do you create a socially responsible business that's profitable and scalable and sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And we discuss the executive functioning to make that happen. And so so I'm really proud of that and I'm excited by that. It also means that I have to have physical copies in 8 weeks.
Uh-huh. What's the problem? What's the
Uh,
challenge? I don't
th-
understand.
th- there is there is no challenge. It's just a matter of throwing money at it. So I'm deep in the heart of that, and it's very exciting. I'm pleased that we'll share. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of my learnings and writing this book as we proceed. But that actually takes us to the next why we're here today, which is to discuss how do you turn strangers into evangelists? Because this gentleman who read this manuscript to me was a stranger. He happened
Mm-hmm.
to know my co-author, but he was a stranger to me. But in the conversation we had about the book, he was truly an evangelist about the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so today I want to talk about how do we intentionally turn strangers into evangelists, because that really is the goal of all marketing is to see if you can take somebody who has no idea who you are and have them out there beating the drum. Because as everybody listening knows, the most powerful marketing you have is passionate word of mouth, where
Right.
people are so excited they tell everybody they know and say they drag people kicking and screaming to do business with you. That's
Right. But I've also found the opposite side of things, and that is they're
Mm.
so happy with what you do that they don't want to tell anybody else about you because they don't want other people to eat up your time or take you away or do
Well,
some.
that's true when they see you as mission critical.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's
Hmm.
so, but you've got to start somewhere, that evangelist thing. All right. So kick us off, my man, and tell us what's your first point? What are we talking about?
Well, the first thing is that every customer takes a different journey from being a stranger to where they end up settling, whether they're just a happy consumer or a raving evangelist. They all take a similar journey. And that is, they start off where they have no idea that you exist, and then somehow they become aware of who you are and what you do and the outcome that you deliver to your customers and the benefits of those outcomes to your customers. And that awareness phase is the first phase of marketing. You got to let the world know that you exist and why somebody should pay attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the that point is really very clear because as people move from aware of you to interested in you to excited about doing business with you, it's a different level of emotion at every step of the game.
Right.
And you and I've talked about this in the past, but it's really important for people to realize this, that marketing is a lot like dating.
Mm-hmm.
You meet somebody you find some chemistry with, you don't take them out to dinner and ask them to marry you on the first date. Well, you
Right.
might, and if the chemistry is intense, that might work out.
Yeah, it might work out for a while, but generally speaking, it doesn't last long.
Well, part of it is because you haven't explored all the boundaries of who this person is, and
Right.
after you've married them, you find out they have some really, really unsavory habits, personal habits that you just cannot live with any longer,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to move on. But the whole idea is that you meet somebody with some chemistry, and the first thing you do is say, "Hey, would you like to go out for some coffee?" It's just coffee. There's
Mm-hmm.
no big investment, not a lot of time, easy to say, "Oop, I got to take this call," and exit stage left. But if coffee goes well, then you say, "Hey, would you like to get together for lunch someday?" Yeah, sure, let's
Mm-hmm.
do that. So it's just lunch, right? You move to just lunch, same kind of situation, and lunch goes really well, and you say, "Hey, would you? I got some tickets to a show. Would you like to go? Would you like to go to a show? Would you like to go to dinner? Would you would you like to come over to my house? Would you like to see my etchings? Would you like to meet my parents?" Right? And so there's this increasing experience of emotional involvement.
Mm-hmm.
We start off with low emotional involvement and we move to high emotional involvement as we go through a dating process.
Right.
And then as we have higher and higher emotional involvement, we might have increasing financial involvement. We start off with low financial involvement, $10 for 2 coffees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we go a little more, we have $50 for lunch with a glass of wine each. And then you go a little higher up and we have tickets, we have $200 worth of show tickets, and a little go higher up. You have a high-end meal for $500. Yeah, it's because I buy those expensive bottles of wine. And
Nice.
so, well, they work better. Let me tell you something. The expensive wine works way better than the cheap wine.
Well, that's good to know. I'll have to try that sometime.
Hmm. Well, here's the reason why: is expensive wine is luscious, and of course, that's the feeling you want them to have in their mouth as they're getting to know you and express their chemistry to you.
Right.
Cheap wine is acidic and puckery, and you don't want that. No.
No, you don't want puckery wine. No.
So the point here, though, is that we go through an emotional trip from low emotional involvement to high emotional involvement before we start to turn up the financial involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happens when people take their customer journey. They start off where there's no emotion whatsoever in knowing who we are or what we do, if there's even any chemistry from a business standpoint that exists. And we have to increment them along, increasing their emotional involvement, where they get more and more excited because they see the possibilities and the potential and the alignment between what you offer and what they desire.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to the point where they say, this is, I've been thinking about this. This is really something pretty good. I think I'd like to explore more. What's the next step? And then we start to get in financial involvement involved. Now, what a lot of people attempt to do in marketing is go
Mm-hmm.
from low emotional, low financial involvement to high emotional, high financial involvement in a single step.
Right. Well, and
And
let me build on that too. What they also try
yes,
to do is they try to use the funnel model, right? They go that
hmm
low emotion, low financial, and then they think, okay, it can up them a level and up them a level and up them a level. And they think
yep,
that if they get them in at the bottom end,
hmm
that it's going to grow as time goes on, which is true sometimes, but not when we're talking B2B business. Is very, very rare. Usually people are coming to you with a bigger problem than just, I need a box of something, you
Well,
know?
even at the low end, somebody whose list I'm on sent me an email and offered me a book for $5 that looked interesting, and I went to go buy the book and saw that the $5 book had a $79 a month string attached to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I could buy the
Tripwire.
book. Yep, I could buy the book, but I would have to go cancel the $79 a month wire that was attached to that. And so I said, screw it. I'm not gonna buy your book. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
have a really bad taste in my mouth for that particular vendor right now, because he went from somebody who I would consider as being interesting to somebody who's out to get my money because of the lack of emotional involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he destroyed the relationship that I had, tenuous as it was with him, because of that low emotional involvement.
Right,
So I think even
exactly.
even the funnel model can destroy your market if you don't do it correctly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, he blew that one.
Mm-hmm. So back to your main point that you were getting to, which was getting that emotional involvement. How does that help us, start to build that relationship?
Well, the emotional involvement is all about alignment with their requirements and desires, and an alignment with their identity with your identity.
Mm-hmm.
How you present themselves, how you present yourselves to them, and the alignment of their identity is an important component of that. What that means is that your marketing has to look and feel like marketing they're comfortable with.
Right.
And what that means is that your messaging and the words you use have to have a look and feel that feels comfortable with the words that they use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that identity alignment is one of the missing insights that most marketeers have. They think that something that's kitschy or cool is going to grab people's attention. It might, but it may not align with their motivation or more importantly, their identity, in which case
Right.
you got nothing. You got
Right.
nothing. I'm serious. You have absolutely nothing. And the reason why is because for a customer to buy something from you, they have to see doing business with you as part of their identity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Such a critical aspect. It's one of the reasons why if you're doing business with boomers at the top of the organization, you better be wearing a suit, because if that's what they wear, you better be wearing one of those too, because that's part of the identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that emotional involvement is, you're like me, I can trust you.
Right. Well, and that gets back to that know, like, and trust model.
Absolutely, my friend. All these things have threads that tie together.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
and that know, like, and trust, I always take people on that emotional journey,
Right
and
on.
that's the key thing is people get to know you through awareness. People get to like you through engagement. People get
Yes.
to trust you through commitment and execution, which is part of your race model, which I will bring up in a little while. I'll
It's
actually show
okay.
that.
It's all yours now. I shared it
Well,
with you,
no,
and
it's
you're running with it. You
well,
are racing with it.
but it's so ingrained in my mind about winning the
Mhm.
race, and that honestly, that's kind of the cornerstone. You gave me that, and that's one of the pieces I'm putting in the ebook and talking about that. So, yeah, but that's so core is
Mhm.
that people try to jump to trust,
Yes.
you know,
You have to earn it.
right? And
Mhm.
trust is something like you said, it's an emotional connection where I can see myself working with you. I
Yes.
am trusting you with my business. I'm trusting you with my job, and you cannot circumvent that.
No, you can't. It's
Mhm.
not possible to circumvent that. Well, there is there's one case where you can circumvent that, and that's in the case of a dire emergency, a blood spurting problem. And unless you're in the business of solving blood spurting problems, that's probably not an option for you.
Right.
But if somebody has a problem, and if they don't do something right away, they're willing to take high levels of risk because the cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of the perceived risk. So, but if you are in the business where like for example in IT, where you can help people if they have a cyber attack and you can help them, there may be somebody that does business with you. If they're aware of you, they
Right.
may go from low emotional involvement to high financial and emotional involvement because you have expressed that you can do this, and they're willing to take that risk because if they don't get back online, they're going to be out of business.
Mhm.
That's the only exception to this idea of going from low emotional involvement to high emotional involvement, and then go from low emotional financial involvement to high financial involvement. It's that track. It's that journey.
Mhm.
So one of the fastest ways of laying the groundwork for trust is telling stories.
Yep.
In fact, telling stories when you're selling mission critical products is one of the best ways to do so, because you can illustrate expertise and authority through that story. And the really cool thing about when you tell stories, people suspend um, belief that you're selling them something. Because if you tell a story that's a pure story, let me tell you a story about this guy I knew, and you tell the story about how he had a particular problem, and he found a particular solution, and the outcome of that solution, and we were the people that provided that solution. It works best if you surprise them at the end that it was you that did it. Telling it as an anonymous third party to begin with, and you tell them it's you at the end, that it works way better.
Right.
But that story allows you to tell them the journey, the customer journey that somebody else was on, and that their future is your history. And you can illustrate that through the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is a critical concept, to illustrate that their future is your history, is part of how you can establish authority and trust by saying, I have gone on this journey before, and we came back with a prize.
And the prize is success and employment and all of those
Their
fun
success.
things. Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Right on.
And and that's, one of the key elements of that is telling the story in a way that makes the person feel like they could be injected into that story.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what Hollywood does. Is Hollywood
Yes,
tugs
they
on
do.
your emotion all throughout an entire process. It's like, how would you act if Yoda was beating you up and you're trying to learn all these new skills and you just say, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And Yoda is encouraging you. You're imagining yourself in that position and saying, I would feel the same way. I understand this is hard. And then you see the success. Now all of a sudden you're married to that success. So by telling that story, you've really made a connection.
That's exactly right. And part of the magic of Hollywood is that we see ourselves in situations we don't know how to get out of, and we want to know what the solution is, because if we happen to be in that situation sometime in the future, we know what the answer is.
Right. We're all MacGyvers.
We're all MacGyvers. Exactly. Yes. So well stated, my friend. That's exactly what it is. We are all MacGyvers. Mm-hmm.
All right, so next up on the totem pole.
Well, just because somebody does business with you and they have high emotional and high financial involvement doesn't mean they're going to be an evangelist.
Right. Very true.
It means that they're a satisfied customer and they might do business with you again if the need arises, but they're not going to get out there and get wildly involved and go out there and, without being asked, haul people to do business with you. And part of this has to do with the law of unequal results, otherwise known as Pareto's law or the law of 80-20.
Right.
And as everybody knows, and it's worth reviewing because it's an important concept to apply to marketing and sales, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. It may not be exactly those numbers, but it'll be an unequal amount of money. There's going to be a larger amount of money that comes from a small amount of customers, and you need to figure out what that is. It could be 60-40, it could be 90-10, but it's going to be some unequal amount of money. And you have to identify who those people are, because they're your hyper responders. They're the ones that do more business with you than anybody else, and you need to really pay attention to them because you want more of them in your business. So you really want to pay attention to those people to understand the thought process they went through, the emotional journey that they went through, the financial journey that they went through, so that you can tighten your story to tell one of your hyper responder stories versus somebody who is your bottom 10% that's causing your headaches. You don't want to be telling more of those stories. You don't want more of those people. You want more of your high responder stories. And I'm sure you've got some interesting ideas around that. I want to hear them because I got more things to share with you, but this one is one that's worth chewing on.
Well, and I think the key to this is, if you sit down, you look at the people that are helping you become most successful, the ones that are spending the most money. What we tend to do is not want to rock the boat, right? But the key thing I think that you have to do is, the answers are in the questions that you ask them. You have to be willing to risk a little to gain a lot, right? And so a perfect example I'll give you of this is one of the customers I work with is in the barcoding industry, and a friend of mine who is in the video industry put up a barcode on Facebook with his Facebook in the middle, and it was a QR code, and said, pull up your phone, click this to go to join my group, which I thought was really cool. So I put it in front of the client and said, "Hey, you guys are in this industry. What do you think about this?" And basically, it's like I'm thinking of ways to try to promote you differently. I'm trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what excites you and those kind of things. And they came back and said, that is just it's so cheesy in our industry. And it's so, it's so low end. Why wouldn't anybody just want to put a link up, right? Why would you want to have to go to your mobile phone and click on something to go through something when somebody's looking at a computer and just click a link? And they say it's visually different, but it's not, the people who are in our industry are not going to grab their mobile phone and think it's cool, because to them it's like all they do all day long. And they went, totally makes sense, right? So, what you think in your mind is important to them, you need to ask the questions and then learn why. So
Exactly.
now I've learned something that, the sophistication level of their audience, they're looking for something different than just a, parlor trick.
Yes. I think that your point is so important, and that is you have no idea how your best customers use your products.
Right.
You have no idea how your best customers engage with your company until you start to look at them. And the reason why we can say that with confidence is because a vast majority of your customers are engaging with you in a different way, the way that you're coming to market with right now.
Mm-hmm.
But your best customers may be doing something completely different. And that's why it's so important to dig in to get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And and actually, I think that the concept of putting up a QR code on a computer screen on a web browser that people can then click um, on their
Mobile phone.
phone is freaking brilliant, because there's a lot of things that I want to do on my phone that
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do on my computer. Keep in mind that how people use computers is lean forward. They lean forward to work on their computer. The way they use their phones is lean back.
Mm-hmm.
And they're different body energies and they're different experiences. And when I want to read, I don't like reading on a browser. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why is that my advanced age, I have progressive lenses. And for me to read on the screen, I have to do this with my head
Mm-hmm.
to keep the sweet spot in the focus on the screen. I
Right.
don't have that problem with my phone because the phone size is so much smaller. So because of my physiology, I like reading on a Kindle or a phone, not on a computer.
Which absolutely makes sense.
Mhm.
And the idea of having, the QR code itself, what I've also been noticing is a lot of TV commercials are putting up QR codes.
Sure, people
And
just snap. They got the phone in their hand as they're watching TV.
right.
Right, snap.
Yeah, well, you don't even have to snap. You just go to your camera. It automatically, now the
Right,
the software just automatically takes you to that browser page.
right
And
on.
so, there's a lot of things about that, and there's a millennial audience that would like that. So,
Mhm.
but the key thing is you have to get inside the heads. You have to know it's not just understanding the likes and dislikes. It's understanding the why behind those likes and dislikes that is so
Absolutely.
important.
That's that's and what we're really looking for is the emotional why,
Right, exactly. Mhm.
and
Yes.
not the logical why. The logical why is secondary to the emotional why.
Mhm.
And I think in your example of the QR code, it costs you nothing to try it out. And
Right.
who knows, it may become one of your best sources of highly responsive customers.
Mhm. And the thing is, it may not work for that one particular customer, but it may be an idea for another one. It's
That
just, and
doesn't
now that
matter.
I understand why it may not work for them or why they don't want to do it, doesn't necessarily mean it wouldn't be a good idea for something else. It might be a good idea for me.
Absolutely. Well, I think this also brings up a common marketing mistake, which is that people make marketing decisions based on the input of a single person who is unqualified to render that decision. And the worst possible thing you can do is show your marketing materials to your spouse and let them
Yeah.
opine upon it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That happens all the time. And
And those are customers you have to fire as quickly as possible.
mhm.
You hired a marketing expert and you're going to run this past somebody who has no impact, and they're going to look at it through their lens. They're not even a buyer. Your spouse isn't even going to buy this stuff, and you want them
Right.
to render an opinion on it? Excuse me, you're fired. You're an
Yes.
idiot. I cannot work with idiots because it makes me look like an idiot. Bye.
Yeah. No, that
Here's your money back.
right. And it is difficult, when you're doing that. But one of the key things that, when it comes to marketing, and this is something that, I'm not trying to pick on any particular people or any particular companies, but there are, in the industry that I work in, which is the middle market, they don't
Yep.
have small companies don't have a marketing department. You're the marketing department, right? Big companies have a marketing department. They have people that is a marketing manager, and they have marketing people that, one group works on the website, one works on print, one works on email, one works on podcasts and video. I mean, they have groups,
Yep.
When I worked at AT&T, we had a photography department, a video department, and a PR department, and all those other things, and they were under one umbrella. Middle market tend to have kind of a hybrid. It's not necessarily a department, but there is a person that they consider to be the marketing person, right? And
somebody responsible for marketing activities. Yep.
right, exactly. But what it ends up being is usually one of three people, or maybe a combination of all of the above. It's Brenda, the receptionist, who is now in charge of all your social media because she knows how to tweet, right? The second one is Vlad, who happens to be the IT guy who knows how to put together a website but couldn't write his way out of a paper bag.
Sorry, even worse.
Yeah. Or then it might be somebody like Carol, who used to be in newspapers or PR, but then decided that since that industry is kind of dying, that they become a marketing expert, and they come in and they're really good at writing, but don't understand the activities behind all the technologies in there. And so what ends up happening is these companies will focus on these people, and they get into that B sauce. It's like, we're going to spend all our time in social media and somebody's just posting stuff out there. We're going to spend all our time on our website. We're going to do SEO and all this other stuff. Or we're going to write these great blog posts and articles, and we're going to put them out there. But there's no plan of action or no concept behind the whole thing. And they're missing the emotional connection that you're talking about with
yes, they're missing the emotional connection. And my friend, they're also missing that your customers engage with you different ways.
Right.
For example, if you ran radio ads, you would never get to me because I do not listen to the radio. I listen to pre-recorded music.
Right.
My radio has never even been turned on in my truck. Never, not even once. Sorry. And if you run TV ads, you're not going to reach me because I don't watch broadcast television.
Right.
I just don't. That's not how do you reach me? Well, you reach me through perhaps social media, but more importantly, you reach me through people who are like me.
Right.
And so that's the reason why you have to have multiple vectors to market. You have to have multiple ways of reaching out to people and broadcasting your information.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I built the ecosystem that I have. It's you're going to produce all of the above, right? Because like you said, and take that even one step further, and I don't want to eat up too much of your time because I want to make sure you get through all your points.
We have plenty of time.
Okay, good. Because one of the things, and I was at a presentation the other day, I learned something new about a new presentation system that does polling on the fly. You put your presentation in, it does polling, and then it gives you active feedback and stuff like that. And one of the questions that the person asked, which I'm very aware of, is how do you learn? Do you learn auditorily, visually, tactily, those kind of things? And what you saw was, even in this audience of like 20 people, it was all across the board, right?
Of course.
And so if you're trying to reach everybody in this room, you have to do some things in print, some things in video, some things in audio, some things in graphics, some things where you physically hand them something, in order to reach everybody. So every marketing message that you create needs to be delivered to all of those people, and it has to work in all of those media.
Yes. That's such a critical concept. Which gets back to the first point, is that everybody's journey is different.
Right.
It starts in a different place. Ultimately, you want it to end in the same place, But
Mm-hmm.
but everybody's journey starts in a different location, and your marketing has to encompass those people. Now, it's entirely possible that you have a relatively homogeneous market. For example, in the world of IT CIOs tend to have a fairly homogeneous view of the world
Mm-hmm.
as necessitated by their outcomes and by the things that they do. So in that particular case, we can use more focused methodologies to reach IT people
Right.
because they tend to be a homogeneous market. In other situations, in other B2B, you have an absolutely you know crazy marketplace. What's the opposite of homogeneous? Androgynous? No, that's not it.
No. I'm trying. I can't think that damn fast, and I'm not going to go to a thesaurus.
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter right now. But the point is that we
How about
have
unhomogeneous?
I know it's actually it's heterogeneous.
Thank you.
Yep, that's the opposite of homogeneous is heterogeneous. Yeah, so you might have a heterogeneous market where they have lots of people, but they come in different ways. But the only way you're going to figure that out is by A, testing, and B, um, researching customers who have actually made purchases.
Right.
You have to, if you really want to know what's going on, you have to talk to a wide sampling of people that do business with you. The good news is that people who do business with you are likely to respond to your conversation. But that also means that any kind of polling that you do has to be broad enough in perspective so you can actually get the information that you desire. You can
Mm-hmm.
create polls through your own small lens that
Right.
gives you stilted information, gives you incomplete information, and when that's a problem, and I'm sure that you've seen it too, we get polls and they're polling for a specific outcome versus to understand the marketplace.
Right.
Bad,
Exactly.
bad, 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 bad.
Mm-hmm.
Bad, 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 bad. Of course, and of course, unless you're trying to affect an election, that's the only reason to.
Yes, which is very true. And we can go down that road, but that's a whole nother bacon and coffee podcast over there.
Yeah, and that actually is an interesting case study in marketing, and we don't need to play with that today.
Right. Exactly.
But what I want to get back to is this concept of unequal results.
Mm-hmm.
A good marketing person and a good salesperson and a good CEO pays close attention to those hyperactive customers. Not only are you want to find more people like them because that's how you're going to rapidly grow your business. It's one of
Well,
the
define
strategies.
define what a hyperactive customer is. I mean, explain it. When you say
Sure,
hyperactive, not like
hyperactive,
crazy.
hyper responsive.
Hyper
It means
responsive. Okay.
it means they frequently accept your offers. It means they order a lot. It means that they've incorporated you into their business process. They're hyper responsive, and they do more business with you than anybody else because you help meet a need in a way that nobody else can meet. And that's that 20% that does 80% of your revenue. You have to really focus and pay very close attention to them because the tighter that you can increase their emotional involvement with you, the more money that they'll ultimately spend. There's going to be some correlation between those two elements. So pay attention to them and really get to understand their thought processes and their decision-making processes. Understand how they engaged with you and what they like about you and what they don't like about you and why they chose you over their competition, because that information is going to give you high leverage in finding more just like them. So you gotta pay attention to those folks and really understand their world, and then tune your marketing so that you can find more just like them.
Mm-hmm.
That's high leverage marketing, and that really is the ultimate tool is to test against your highest responsive customers.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've learned about that is a lot of times you have to, as a business, it sometimes helps to get an outside perspective because,
You
again,
have to.
we always tend to look at the forest through the trees, right? In
Hmm.
other words, we're looking at
Hmm.
that tree, that one tree in the forest is like, look at that sequoia. Oh my God, if I could just get one more sequoia like that. Oh, there's a sequoia. The thing that we're not looking at is we're not looking at, the level of the ground, the fertileness of the soil, the sunlight that it gets, all the different perspectives around why that one sequoia is so great. But we
Yeah,
just say, I want another sequoia like that, right? And that's where I
yeah,
think having that outside perspective is so important.
it is, and the reason why is because we all have blind spots,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know what we don't know. And that's especially true when it comes to marketing for entrepreneurs. Marketing is one of the most misunderstood words in business. In fact, it probably is the most misunderstood word in business because it covers so much ground, so much perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so having an outside marketing perspective is critical to you understanding, and you're going to learn a heck of a lot. You bring in an outside perspective, and the blinders are going to fall off your eyes. And if you've listened to this, you probably had a few epiphanies that Brian and I have shared with you about how you have to think about marketing and how you have to pursue it. And if you haven't had any epiphanies, then you ought to join us on the show and share us with
Right.
share with us some of your learnings. But that's the whole idea, is that we share a perspective that allows you to walk away going, I hadn't thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that might work for me, and expect to have that, especially with somebody who has broad marketing perspective. Now, you're
Right.
not going to get that with somebody who just does websites or just does SEO, because they have a very narrow perspective of what marketing means. Same thing with an advertising agency, very narrow perspective because they're looking at marketing through the lens of advertising. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why my dearly departed co-author J. Conrad Levinson, who wrote Guerrilla Marketing, said there's 100 marketing weapons. 100.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you use, the more successful your marketing will be. And he said that the last marketing weapon you use is advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and advertising support, here's the bottom line. If you don't have your messaging right, if you don't have your channels right, if you don't have all the capture, the data analysis, all those things. I always talk about, I mean, I try to simplify things and always say the three most important things of marketing are: number one, having a home base. Where are you going to get people to do something? Your home
Yeah.
base could be the shelf
Mhm.
on a store. It could be a website. It's got to be
Mhm.
someplace where you can capture some data.
Yeah,
Second part is
yes, where they convert their emotional involvement to financial involvement.
exactly. The second piece of it is that data. How are you capturing the data and how are you looking at it? What
Mhm.
perspective are you looking at it from? One of the biggest common mistakes I see is everybody is trained that more traffic on a website means more business. No, more traffic on a website means more traffic on a website. It doesn't necessarily mean more business. You have to figure out, is that traffic actually engaged with a website? Is it
Mhm.
actually taking action? Is somebody
Mhm.
responding to people? And then the
Mhm.
last part is the messaging and the content. And the content
Mhm.
needs to be fed into that ecosystem of that end result all the time. You
And
know,
that content has to be tested and tested and tested and tested. The testing never stops.
right, and changed and update and modified and changed and update and modified. It's
Mhm.
a never-ending cycle of create content, drive them to where you want them to be, measure what's going on, create content based on that, drive them where you want to be, measure it, keep going. I mean, it's that one giant circle. It's the Hakuna Matata of life.
Indeed. Well, and that also gets back to the concept of, if you meet a guy and you want to get to know him better,
Hmm.
as a buddy, not romantically, but as a buddy, you don't ask him out to coffee. You say, hey, let's go down to the bar and watch the game and have a few
Right.
beers,
Hmm.
right? And the conversation you have with that person to engage with them is going to be very different than somebody who you have romantic interest in and you ask them out for coffee,
Right.
right? Because romantic interest starting at a bar usually isn't going to go where you want it to go.
Right.
At least not long term. Short term, you might get lucky. Long term, probably not what you're looking for. And so there's different routes, emotional routes to a relationship, and you have to decide what relationship you want. The stories you tell your buddy at the bar are going to be different than the stories you tell your romantic interest at the coffee shop. And if you screw them up, it's not going to work out.
Right. Either way.
Either way. Hi, you look lovely today.
Yeah. Dude. No, wait. How
So
about them
you're
bears?
exact. There you go. You got it. That's those aren't pillows, right? So though this point is really critical, is the emotional journey people take is different depending on who they are and what you're trying to
Hmm.
accomplish,
Right.
and which brings you back to your particular point as you keep testing, 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 testing. Now, I want to get to the next point in this conversation about stranger
Hmm.
evangelists, because we haven't talked about the evangelist part yet.
Good. Fire away.
So in the law of unequal returns, it's a nesting function. it keeps going. So within those 20% of the people that do 80% of your business is another 20%, that is even more responsive than the big 20%. And within that 20% is another 20% that are your highest value, most profitable people.
Mm-hmm.
So we go from 20% to 20% of that, so that's 4% of everybody. And we take 20% of that, and we have 0.16% of
Mm-hmm.
your overall. That 0.16% are the people that become your evangelists.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 1,000 customers, you're going to have 2 evangelists out of your 1,000, but you have to find them, you have to groom them, and they're worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Right.
Absolutely worth it.
And so how I have ideas, but how do you how do you suggest that you groom them?
Well, you have to talk with them and find out what makes them happy.
Okay.
Because they are so rare, they're the gem, they're the diamond in your entire customer base.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have these are the people that want a personal relationship with you because they have so identified with you and your business that they are honored that you pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
They are thrilled that you think that what they have in mind is valuable. And so it's a personal relationship. It is conversations. They have your phone number.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You schedule regular conversations with them to find out how they're doing and what you can do to help them become more successful. And they invite you to come in and talk to their group, and they invite you to come in and talk to their association.
Mm-hmm.
And they do all kinds of things that nobody else would do because of their high level of emotional involvement with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they are your fan club president.
Mm-hmm.
And the fan club president gets to talk with the star.
That is yes. Yes.
Right? That's how that
Mm-hmm.
works.
Right. But herein lies the issue and the concept that I see, and that is you have to be willing to invest in them to
Mm-hmm.
let them be the star as well, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to make them feel like they are the star. And through that process, in order to create an evangelist, you have to get them to speak your vernacular so that they can verbalize, communicate what's important about it.
Now, the really cool thing is they naturally will once you teach them because they want to increase their identity with you.
Right, exactly. So that's, the thing I learned about doing, the bacon system is people got the bacon. They would talk about the bacon. They understood that bacon meant building authentic connections, online networking. They could repeat that as easily as I could.
Mm-hmm.
But once they started to understand the why behind it, then they started to say, aha, I want to be more engaged with that. And that's essentially, so getting your
Yes.
customers to evangelize for you, you have to be able to get them to understand the why behind the what and the how. And
Yes.
once they feel like they're attuned to that why, then what they say comes out a lot easier. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You have to teach them how to articulate your value through their emotion.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's their emotional connection that really propels the the compellingness of what they do. And so you have to be willing to train them. Your number one customer. You have to say, what if we flew you into the what if we flew you into the factory for our shareholder meeting? Would you be willing to say a few things about your experience to our board of directors? And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, you do that for us? Absolutely. You're a valuable client, and we want to reward you for your loyalty and show you how much we appreciate you. In fact, I shouldn't say this, but we have something special for you when you're there. And you present them with the Customer of the Year award.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's an amazing way of doing it. And um, you give them the opportunity to feel like the hero. They're the
They are.
hero of this story.
They are the hero.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely are the hero. And then you can talk about how they're the best exemplar of your perfect customer.
Mm-hmm.
And the board of directors can shake their hands and they can feel like a superstar because they've met their stars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really good. It's very powerful. And that's what's required to take somebody to an evangelist, where they are so bought in heart and soul that they are willing to jump on an airplane and hang out with you. Yeah.
So in the final 10 minutes that we have, go through that process just in a little bit, go through it quickly so everybody understands the steps, but then give us a case study or give us an example of where that worked.
I think I said, do you have those graphics that I emailed to you?
I do, but I don't have them handy.
All
So,
right. Well, that's okay. We can we can talk about them. The basic idea, first of all, is that everybody has a unique journey as they become your customer, from where they have no idea who you are to where you become an important part of their life.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea how that journey is going to start, but you do know how that journey is going to end.
Right.
All roads lead to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, how can you create signposts everywhere that people like to start a journey to doing business with you? And those signposts are about awareness. And what that does is it's the hint that, you have something
Mm-hmm.
that they may want that's going to satisfy a requirement or a desire of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey starts off with as going from low emotion to high emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The fastest way to do that is through stories,
Mm-hmm.
where they can see themselves as potentially being the hero of that story if they choose to take that path to becoming emotionally involved in you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to remember that the dating sequence, it starts off with coffee, goes to lunch, goes to a show, goes to dinner,
An expensive wine.
and expensive wine. Expensive wine is definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely worth it. Have you ever noticed that when you go out to a fine restaurant and you drink fine wine, that the inebriation is a different quality than if you're
Yes.
sitting at home and drinking, and it's a different quality if you're sitting at a bar and watching a show, or I mean,
Yes.
watching a football game. It's a different quality of inebriation. It's
Mm-hmm.
much more refined.
Yes.
It's much warmer. It's much more sexual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. That's the reason why we do that.
Well, of course. Yes. Deep Thoughts by Mark S.A. Smith.
Yeah, but it's all. Yeah, thank you. It's also part of that emotional journey strategy.
Right.
I find it to be the most amazing thing. It's and anyway, chemistry aside, the idea here is that we move people up the emotional journey before we start to ask them to be involved financially. And at that point, they'll be glad to become involved financially.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because they see this as not risky, but actually the next logical step in doing
Mm-hmm.
business with you. And this is one of the reasons why the commonly held concept of salespeople can close business is actually narcissistic and egotistical and arrogant, because a salesperson can't close somebody unless they're buying a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're buying something that has emotional attachment or is mission critical, the close doesn't happen until the customer is ready. It's like, asking somebody to marry you too soon in the dating cycle. Asking somebody to marry you is the close, but it should be that you've already talked about, geez, what do we see as our long-term plans together? I don't know. Maybe someday we should consider joining households and
Right. How many kids do you want?
married.
Yeah. How many kids do you want? Where do you want to live when you retire?
Yeah, exactly. Those are all the conversations that lead to the close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is, I want to be married to you.
Yep.
I want to enter a contract that's extremely expensive.
Yes.
To end. You know why divorce is so expensive, Brian?
Why?
Because it's worth it. Woo! The
Yeah.
other opposite, the opposite end of this, the breakup of emotional involvement. So the idea is to take them from low emotional involvement to high emotional involvement, and
Hmm.
then to high financial involvement. Then the second piece is that within those people that are high emotionally and high financially involved with you, you're going to have an unequal number 80-20 rule here at play. So roughly 20% are going to be doing 80% of the business, and you need to pay extra special attention to those 20% because, frankly, those are the people you want to be marketing to.
Right.
Don't worry about the 80%. They're going to come along anyway. Let's focus on the 20%. So we change our marketing strategies to find more like them, and we do that by getting to know them very, very well. And then
Hmm.
understanding within that 20%, there's another 20%, so roughly 4% of your overall customers that are really going to be the biggest responders within
Hmm.
your 20% group. And you want to really, really, really get to know and love them because they are the farm for your evangelists, which are the 20% within that 20%.
Well, and you've resonated with at least 20% of our audience because Mark Lautenbach, he said, "Great stuff, guys. I agree with you on the inebriation quality." And he
Oh!
says, and he says, "Mark, you are correct on divorce." So, see, you've emotionally connected with at least 20% of our audience.
Well, at least in that emotional connection is through shared experience.
Yes, exactly. And story, right? It's all about story.
And those are also, they were very short stories,
Hmm. Hmm.
but they were still story. They were
Right.
absolutely still story. So that is how you take a customer from a stranger to an evangelist, is through that journey and through paying attention to the 20% of the 20% of the
Yep.
20%, which is 1.4%. I had miscalculated. 1.4% of your overall customers are in that evangelist range.
Hmm. And
And so,
I wanted to share this graphic because this is what we've talked about in the past, and this is where it's kind of evolved to. So what
yes,
you talked about today was, first and foremost, in order for anybody to buy from you, there has to be some relevance, right? So that
right,
relevance is the kind of the beginning of the race. You
it is.
talked about creating awareness, consistency, and engagement, right?
Yes,
So the bottom line is, if the message is relevant and you create awareness and you consistently do it on multiple channels, you're going to create some engagement, right?
yes,
And from there, that relevance is going to build a relationship where
yes,
you get the opportunity to create authority to
yes.
that commitment and execution. And through that sales journey is where you build enough know, like, and trust to be able to create that evangelist, profit relationship is what I would call it. Would you
That's right.
say?
And so your race spider
Mm-hmm.
that you were illustrating, your eight-legged race spider, so we have a
Mm-hmm.
racing spider,
We
is
do.
exactly how we do the know like. That's how we get to know, like, and trust.
Right. And the left-hand side of the spider is the marketing, and the right-hand side is the sales. And
Yes,
race basically works together.
it
Yep.
has to work together, and it has to be continuous.
Right.
Because if you show up for coffee and you're a different person when you show up for lunch, it's going to blow it. That consistency across the entire race is critical. I also want to point out that the importance of relevance is that that's the starting point of trust.
Right.
People have to want to trust you for trust to be built. And if there's no relevance, there's no reason for them to invest in trusting. So trust is expensive,
Right. Trust is
and
expensive.
trust is expensive. So if you have no relevance, they have no reason to enter the journey because they don't see the reason to even begin with a trusted relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And and one of the reasons why we like branding is because branding is an easy on-ramp to relevance and trust.
Right. Well, it's an on-ramp, but the key thing about branding is the branding has to match all of those pieces. In other words,
And,
and I
and
and I can get we could do a whole nother speech on this particular thing. I met with somebody where their branding was so all over the place they couldn't figure out why they couldn't make any sales because they didn't know who they were talking to and what mattered to them, right?
and remember that branding has to map to the identity of your customer.
Right,
If
exactly.
it doesn't map to the identity, they cannot engage emotionally because it's too risky.
And the biggest problem with most branding is people tend to dilute their brand to try to cast a wider net when they should be narrowing their brand very specifically to that exact 20% person, right?
Exactly. Narrow your brand to your 20% hyper responder.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to reach out to other people, spin up a different brand.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of reaching out, if people want to reach out to you, my friend, I think this is the best way for them to do that.
Indeed, marksonlinkedin.com will take you directly to my LinkedIn profile. Let's connect. Say, hey, I saw you on Bacon and Coffee with Brian Basilico, and I'll connect with you, and I'll be delighted to put you on my calendar for a 20-minute conversation about anything you want.
Anything, even divorce?
Even divorce, even the elevated inebriation.
That would be another really good one. So, but I just want to close with this last final thought because I don't want to go down that road because you start talking about dating and I don't even want to deal with that.
No.
It's all good. It's all good. But here's the thing. Okay, we talk about evangelists. We talk about how this process works, and I want you to understand that you are somebody who we are both evangelists for each other. And that's one thing that we've done is you've evangelized for me and I've evangelized for you. That's how you get on this Bacon and Coffee, because you provide my audience a perspective and value that they could not get anywhere else.
Oh, you mean I'm a hyper responder? I'm part of that 1.4%?
You are part of that 1.4%, my friend. So
good way of tying this all together, my friend.
I want to thank you. I want to thank IGA for the great connection. I want to thank the internet gods for not crashing our computers. And I want to thank everybody who showed up and watched, and anybody who's watching this on replay. Mark, I will have you back in the new year. It's going to be a new year soon.
I'm going to be in a new location.
There you go. So we'll be talking soon. So I'm going to kick us off with and kick us out with our Bacon and Coffee, or as I like to say, caffeine and bovine ending. So bye, everybody. Peace. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy Festivus. Whatever the heck you do. Enjoy. Bye.